Okay, so people are still coming in, but I'm gonna go ahead and kick off the conversation because I know we have a lot to get through today, and there's also so much to talk about when it comes to circular economy solutions and the career paths of the two speakers that we have today. So, really quick, I'm gonna share my slides and actually just kind of go through some housekeeping for the event today. But again, just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining. My name is Radhika Bhatt. I'm the host for today. Thank you for joining this third installment of the Regenerative Roundtable event series. And today's focus is on circular economy, and we are joined by Lou and Riyana, our two incredible panelists today. So before I go ahead and get started, let me share my screen so I can do a little bit of housekeeping and share that really quick. Okay. Can you see those slides okay? I'm seeing a thumbs up. Okay, cool. Awesome. So really quick housekeeping. So this is a meeting, not a webinar. So please remember to keep yourself on mute. There will be time for Q&A at the end. So you're welcome to unmute, kind of have more of a conversation towards the end. But just something to keep in mind, keep yourself on mute during the conversation. And if not, I can try to mute you, but try to manage that on your own. It's always super helpful. You are also welcome to be on video. Again, this is a meeting, so we can all see each other, connect with each other that way as well. You are welcome to ask questions in the chat at any point in the conversation. I will be kind of keeping an eye on the chat, moderating. I can save some questions for the end, but I can also kind of integrate them into the discussion as well. So if there's anything that comes up, please feel free to share that. And additionally, please remain respectful of the attendees. This conversation series is all about speaking from the heart, building regenerative, lasting conversations, and respectful dialogue, respectful communication is a big part of that. This is the third installment of the Regenerative Roundtable, and we've had different events so far on agriculture, food systems, as well as data and climate. And these conversations are very rich because people are able to speak from the heart, kind of ask really meaningful and intentional questions. So I really encourage everyone here, if you're ever wondering something, there are no stupid questions, there's no silly questions. Like, please feel comfortable and willing to just kind of ask any questions that you want, and we can kind of get through it. The purpose of these sessions here are to really empower people to take action when it comes to climate change and to help everyone here uncover career paths into climate and today circularity, whether you are a recent graduate or a climate curious professional. A little bit about me. My name is Radhika. I'm the founder of Sathe Studio. I run a climate career coaching agency, and I've helped over 400 job seekers pivot and transition their careers into climate in the last 3 years. I kind of work across a variety of climate fields, from sustainable business, clean energy, food systems, really all different sorts of things. And in particular, I'm interested in circularity. I have a lot of people that have come my way interested in circular career paths, which is why I chose our topic for today. The next session, I have a few links that I've dropped in the chat, but the next session will be on April 14th, and it's actually going to focus on self-employment in climate and what that looks like in today's day and age, and all the different forms of self-employment as well. So without further ado, I'm super excited to invite our two speakers here. I have Riyana from Renewable here, who's going to be speaking about her career path, and Lou, who's also the founder of Circular Talent. So we have such rich diversity of experience, not only career paths, but even geography, where we all are based, and the work, the different spaces in which you've done this work. So I'll stop sharing my slides, and yeah, let's go ahead and kind of jump in. So I'd love to invite Lou, Riyana, one of you, to kind of kick us off with your introduction. Really just tell us a little bit about yourself, your career path, and kind of what brought you to circularity, what brought you here. So Riyana, I'll ask you to go first.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to be here with the this group of people, and thanks, Radhika, for putting this together. So my background, I'm originally from Malaysia, and my initial training was in political science. It was to move into diplomacy. However, I ended up in investment banking, which was a huge tangent. And I share this because I think a lot of people, and many of us know this, but a lot of people think that it has to be this linear path, but so much of our careers are never linear in any way. So when I was in investment banking, that was when the pivot into sustainability began. It was in my final years there where there was a project that the bank essentially was financing a project to build apartments in a green space that was right behind where I lived. And that made me extremely comfortable because I was part of the team that was going to essentially sign off on it. And it caused me to really think about, am I doing what's aligned with what I believe in? And that's when things start falling into place. People start noticing that I was starting to make a bit of noise. And the CEO of the Islamic banking arm at that time approached me and he said, hey, there's a lot of sustainability frameworks that are being developed in Europe and Australia right now, and we're in Asia and we don't really have this at the moment. So let's start to build this. So we did. In that process, started working with a bunch of consultants, and it really occurred to me that I just didn't know how to press and dig deeper when they would come to us with solutions. And it made me think, okay, what do I need to get myself into a position where I can do that? And that's what brought me into grad school. So I decided to go back to school. While I was at grad school, again, initial thoughts was, I'm going to go back into finance. It's going to be my path, da 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 da. But I let myself take classes that I was drawn to, and I kept getting drawn to circularity, circular economy and agriculture. Those are the two things. So I realized, okay, how can I find a way to build those two together? And I just so happened to come across my company, Renewable. They were circulating around university, around conferences, and I kept bumping into the CEO. Just went up to the CEO and I said, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. I believe in what you do. And the background of what we do is we take food waste, we process it. Or, I'm sorry, we take agriculture waste. It started off as food waste, but now it's the broader spectrum. It's agriculture waste, process it, we turn it into agriculture inputs, and then that's resold back to indoor growers and now outdoor growers as well. And what I mean by that is indoor farms, so hydroponics, vertical farms, and also typical soil-based farms that you and I are probably more familiar with. So that's my background.
I love it. Thank you so much. Lou, tell us a little bit more about you and in your career path to where you are now, too.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, and first, thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity. I already really like the energy, and I think it's gonna be a super interesting conversation. Yeah, I already have questions for Rihanna, but I'll start with my with my introduction. But yeah, I'm originally from French Polynesia, um, in Tahiti, and I did my studies in Canada, in Montreal, in marketing and finance. So also was not necessarily aiming or destined to be working in sustainability or circular economy, but similarly was within one of my first job experience. I was working in textile production, and I was really looking for ways to optimize, to cut cost in my line of production, ran into these strategies around circular economy, and just started applying them. And I really saw really quite quickly how the impact that it had first, on the actual waste that we were creating. So, for me it was a really great proof of concept. But then and then of course it translated into cost saving because we were needing less material. But then more than that, it was the environment that also changed internally within the company, because we had empower people within the production line, because we went to them to ask them what was their day-to-day activity, what kind of improvement they were thinking of in order to reduce this weight. So there, in a way, by trying to implement this this strategy focused on material, we also changed the communication and the dynamic of the team, because we were introducing new topic and creating links that were not existing before. So that's really from that experience that that I got kind of hooked on the concept, and then I did more the entrepreneurial route, where I created association for entrepreneurs who were starting to work in circular economy in Canada, and so a lot of work in advocacy, which then in the end led me to work within research centers. So more focused on promoting circular economy as a model. I worked with universities and research centers in Canada, and now recently I was working with Circle Economy for the Circularity Gap Report team, so providing metrics at global and national level. And recently, I created a new venture focused on recruitment. So 6 months ago, I co-founded Circular Talent. So it's a recruitment agency specialized in circular economy position, with my co-founder, who is coming from recruitment, and myself in circularity.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. And I love how, we're already setting the stage of everybody, or a lot of people kind of have winding career paths, right? Like there's no one like single pathway into circularity or social impact or climate. Like I think it's lovely to hear how a lot of your different experiences kind of made you think more about circularity or kind of brought you along the path. I want to dig more into your career paths, but before we do that, I almost want to ask, like, how do you define circularity? What is, what defines circularity? What defines circular economy? And maybe even like, what do you think in your experience defines even like circular skills? Let's maybe even like, let's talk about that to start, and then we can like dig more into how that's kind of come across in your career paths.
Lou, I went first, so would you like to take this?
Sure.
Happy.
Sure, sure. So I guess for me, and in a way, it also comes from what I was saying, the way I got into circularity. It's really all about efficiency and keeping materials that we already have extracted at their highest value. And when we go with that in mind, then anything kind of makes sense. Of course, there's like a lot of different interpretation, but it's really about trying to keep everything at their highest value. And then for me, for that, there are different, like, any job can help towards that. It doesn't necessarily need to be a job that is focused on material, because we need to put circular product into market. So anything that is part of the economy, potentially could be contributing to circularity.
So I struggle with this a little bit because on one hand, I think that circularity is incredible, but on the other hand, I feel like so many of our ancestral and indigenous practices have been practicing circularity. We've just renamed it. And so I don't really have a definition for it anymore because I think that it's so broad. It truly is so broad. And the word itself, of course, we can say, yeah, it's resourcing and like moving things around and so on and so forth. But I believe it's a way of life. And I believe that circularity is not just like necessarily a term that is about sustainability. I think that circularity is the way that many communities function even before we existed and we like landed on this earth, right? And I know that's a bit of like a fluffy, answer to your question, but I personally find that I can't land on anything right now, and that's my honest answer. To answer your question about skills, I have been feeling like creativity is extremely important and really, really, really having a strong pulse on what's happening from a grassroots perspective, because a lot of really interesting material usage is happening in really small spaces, and they're not scaling up because they can't access funding to get the technology there. The technology is already there. A lot of the ideas already exist, but really having the ability to think, okay, wait, I didn't even consider that element, that material, that resource, but there could be some way to incorporate this, but that requires you to go to that person, and that requires you to be resourceful. That requires you to think, okay, let's just have this conversation. So the skill itself that I think is actually important that we don't talk about enough is being curious and having conversations with people that you wouldn't normally have conversations with, because the stuff that's happening on the back end for a lot of people aren't talking about it, or a lot of people don't have the platform to talk about it. So that's actually a skill that I would highlight.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And maybe I could add, because I really agree with what you're saying, and in a way, when trying to define like what is a circular economy job, or like what is a circular economy position, in a way it's like can you have a circular economy position in a linear economy? It's like the way to and I agree that, because in a way, like individual contribution can only go so far, and that's why we often talk about systemic change when we talk about systemic or holistic change when we talk about circular economy, because for example, one of the most common position, or role in that we would qualify as a circular job is like anyone who's working on repair, for example, would be like highly circular job. But if you're working, for example, on repair of machinery within within fast fashion or so on, are you really contributing to a circular economy? So that's why it's really important to step back and look at the big picture. And sometimes someone who would just have like on paper a very linear job, I don't know, I'm gonna say like accounting, for example, that has nothing to do with material. If it's accounting within a company that is actually working and pushing the circular economy agenda, then that would qualify much more as a positive circular impact. So it's always important to also look at the broader context of the action and of the skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, if I can add on to that, I love that you mentioned that, Lou, because going back to like understanding the broader picture. So I'm looking at it from a lens of agriculture, right? And understanding where something is grown. So I'll give you a story that I love because it happened to me just a few months ago. So I've been working with a hemp producer, a hemp farm, and we've been trying to figure out how to reprocess hemp waste. In New York State, there was, I'm sure many of you know, and for those who aren't familiar, there was this huge push for hemp over the last few years because legislation allowed it to be legalized. But then what ended up happening was that the supply and demand in the industry just completely did not hit equilibrium. It's still trying to find its equilibrium. And so a lot of these hemp farms have a ton of waste that has just been sitting on their land. And half of them have burnt it, half of them just still have it and they don't know what to do with it. So we were asked by the New York State to go and try and figure out, what can you do with this? And we said, okay, give us what you have and let's start working with it. But what we found was that because the way that some hemp is processed, sometimes it's put through water. And when the water is sitting with this waste, as you can imagine, pathogens are just having a field day. They're just like, it's a big party for them. And if they're doing that for like one day, 365 days, another how many years, right? It's just like pathogen galore. And so when we took that food waste, we're trying to sterilize it and we couldn't do it. And so we were going back and forth with the hemp supply. We were like, we don't know what to do. We're talking to the labs. They don't know what to do. If we burn it at a certain level, it's going to become like, it was a mess. And so what ended up happening was that the farmer, and I felt like he taught me something really important. He sat down, he goes, okay, hemp, where was it really primarily, like, where was it very popular? Afghanistan. It's huge there. It's such a big part of their culture. It's such a big part of their economy. And so he started digging into how hemp supply or hemp growers in Afghanistan, indigenous communities in Afghanistan, would process their hemp waste. And so he came back to us and he said, I figured it out. And he was able to process the hemp waste. And now we're not dealing with the pathogens. And the way that he did it was he replicated how the Afghanis did it historically. And what I thought was incredible was that he went back to the root, which literally the root of the plant. And he was like, where does this grow? Where does this naturally grow? And it grows in that region. And how do the people who lived with these plants, how did they approach it? How did they listen to the plant? How did they learn from it? And so now we're able to process this waste and we can turn it into a different material. And again, the circularity comes into play because he looked at the broader picture. So I really appreciate you mentioning that, Lou, because it's true. Like we look at materials and we look at things in front of us for what they are, but I think it's important for us as sustainability people to look at the connecting factors that go way beyond what's in front of us.
I love that story. That's so powerful. Literally looking the literal root of not only the plant, but the origin and the original use and things like that. That's so amazing. That kind of makes me think in even reading, what people are interested in hearing about today. Like I'm hearing a little bit more about like supply chain. I'm hearing about circular business models. I'm hearing about even like nutrition, sustainable agriculture, uh, retired solar panels. Like there's so many different materials that can be used and that can be turned into more like circular solutions and things like that. So kind of wanted to ask in general, like why do you think circularity is such an integral part of being a solution to climate change, but also like almost what do you think is like the top of mind, like the thing that we need to maybe start thinking about or implementing like sooner rather than later to try to really build circularity into all these different systems that people have kind of mentioned? Big, I know it's a big question.
Yeah. Should I kick us off? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Um, so for me, like, so first, like, for me, circular economy is great, but by itself will not solve climate change. I think, like, it's very important to consider that, and it like linear economy has its bias. It's based on the like this infinite amount of resources available and infinite landfill that we will never have to deal with. In a way, like trying to put circular economy as that solution that will solve everything is also creating that illusion of infinite recyclability and reusability of material, which is like not the case. Like we can improve a lot, but it's still like it's also not going to be the only solution for that. Where I think that circular economy has a lot of potential. It's because right now it's really being seen more and more by companies and governments as a way to mitigate risks, to mitigate risks that are coming from from abuse in the linear economy, in the stress that we're pushing on the planet. I think that the COVID helped a lot in a way the circular economy agenda. Like companies realized how fragile international value chain were, and that's also why we see a lot of innovation in circular economy and supply chain, because it's really being seen as that way to mitigate risk and have more control over the material. But in a way, I think this vision is still not tapping into the full potential of what circular economy is. If we still put circular economy as the strategy to mitigate risk or reduce, negative impact, it's still not fully like what you can do. And, if we think, for example, on the other side of on design, who was using a lot of biomimicry to inspire design, where that looking at the shape of the birds, or the shape of whales to design stuff is helping creating better design. We're still not seeing that for circular economy, that circular system are better system. We use them to mitigate risk. So I think that's still like something that could really be improved in the way in which we're approaching circular economy strategies.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump off what you said about design as well. That's really interesting because I agree. Circularity forces you to really rethink design. And for anyone that's familiar with circularity, I'm sure we all know by now that circularity is about a frame of thinking. And I personally think that circularity forces you to sit with resiliency because a lot of sustainable solutions right now, they sound really great, but we also have to look at what's in front of us. And what's in front of us is, things like, for example, like tornadoes and, all these like, cutting off of electricity is becoming more and more frequent. And yes, there are grids and yes, there are batteries and so on and so forth. But the reality is that not everybody has access to that. And so circular solutions, I feel, are critical because it allows communities to survive in a way, and I don't mean to make it sound like doomsday, but it allows them to rethink how they function in a way where if there are situations that we cannot run away from, it is here, right? It is here. And it allows them to function in a way where come rain or come shine, they can still do what they need to do to some extent. Going back to the design thing, I had a really interesting conversation with the former head of circularity at Nike, and he was sharing something about how um, Nike had this, Nike's been on this thing for the last few years about how they have circular products and they've really been pushing forward sustainability. But what's happening on the back end is that from a supply chain perspective, it's actually very, very, very difficult, obviously for various reasons, because there's so many players. But if you look at, say, for example, one Nike shoe is made out of like 100 different things, literally 100 different things. And so for you to unravel those 100 different things, it was actually very, very, very challenging for them to incorporate circularity into just one shoe. So imagine if they're like, they have so many suites of products, right, in their line. And so it forced them as a whole company to look at each product and go, okay, is that sustainable or is that not? And it may not be that they go down circular route, maybe not, but it could mean that they go down a local route instead. So instead of buying from like, Thailand, and shipping it all the way here, it forced them to unpack the product and go, wait, we can find something very similar locally, or we could find some waste, and that's where circularity comes into play. We could find some waste that mimics that and use it, that's local, and use it in this product instead. So I think it presents opportunities to really rethink design in a way that benefits communities, from a resilience perspective and also from an empowerment perspective, because you're building business, you're building communities again. And I think that's very important because we talk about sustainability, it's always about business, and it's always about environment, but we forget that there are also humans in this picture. And humans, we are in nature, we are part of the environment, and it has to be a holistic perspective.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I want to jump off what you said, but I like what you mentioned, that it's also important to keep an open mind and not just be like, okay, we're just going to be applying circular economy solutions, because if the end goal is sustainability or reducing the impact, circular economy is not always the way to go. And sometimes I see it quite a lot in food waste, actually, or agriculture waste, that sees sometimes a lot of innovation in circularity, but sometimes the impact of just reprocessing agriculture waste that could just be composted is creating products that will be much harder to dispose of or regenerate afterwards. So it's also very important to look at, are you is your product or the process that you're using really is it not like increasing the issue in the end, or should that material, or are there better way for that material to be disposed of or regenerated?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love what you're both saying about really like the true like human side of all of this of sure, we can make circular economy solutions work for businesses and we can prove all this stuff, but at the end of the day it's the individuals in each company or in each team or the founders of these organizations or the farmers themselves that can really drive almost like the adoption of these solutions. And I love how you said that, Rihanna, of like maybe and both of you said it, maybe circular isn't the option. Maybe it's actually like going local, using different materials. Maybe there's some sort of switch there. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing to notice, but also like, these examples of how you've seen that implemented, I think are so, so powerful. And that's kind of another question that I have for you is kind of, it can be a little bit about your career paths or even what you've observed in the space, but I would be remiss to not mention kind of the political landscape that we're in right now, especially in the US. I think it's like something that's very top of mind for people of how do we continue doing climate work or environmental work if we're not allowed to say the words and use certain words to describe this work and things like that. So I kind of wanted to hear about in each of your career paths, how have you kind of overcome resistance or challenges to the work that you want to do, the work that you even know is right? How have you kind of pushed through that and overcome that in your careers? And if it's even happening right now, like we can talk about that too. But I think I would be curious to hear like whenever there's been pushback or kind of resistance to your ideas that you know are right, how have you kind of pushed through and navigated that?
I feel like I don't think my answer, unfortunately, is going to be very enlightening or very rocket sciencey. But yes, the current situation is uh it's difficult. It's very difficult. And I know many people who are, I'm sure, on this call yeah, anyway. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, we have been affected as well. So for example, we were working on a US Department of Agriculture project, and it was to help farms with circular solutions for them to apply on site. And we were working with farms across the country, and we've had to put it on pause. And what's happened is that, many people are being affected. We were awarded the grant, but we also have sub-awardees, and they are in situations where they're looking at their finances. Now, how we're getting through this, or how I've been approaching it, is I believe that there is going to have to be a switch in mindset whereby we don't necessarily have to be in a green quote unquote position, or we don't necessarily have to be in a sustainable role in order to do the work now. It's going to require us to be in positions where perhaps we're going to have to be in like strategy roles, or perhaps we're going to have to be in marketing roles, but it doesn't mean that the impact can't be there. It just means that, yeah, we're going to have to use different words. We're just going to have to be smarter about it. So quite frankly, I don't really have, I think we're all trying to navigate it through it right now, collectively. So my main thing though is let the dust settle. There's so many moving parts, and I think a lot of people are reacting to it, and that's fair. That's natural. But just move slow, because right now being reactive to anything is just not going to help anyone or anything that we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning. I think I forgot, but like myself, I'm actually based in Europe, so seeing things moving from afar, but definitely like there's a repercussion effect happening here too. But in a way, I think it's also like linking back to what you were saying at the beginning, Rihanna, is that circular economy is rebranding of strategies that were already there before. So and in a way, like what we're seeing, especially with circular economy, maybe like other areas of sustainability are being affected differently, but it's moving forward no matter what, because it makes sense financially. So that's one of the biggest advantage of circular economy strategies, is that uh, like you're saying, maybe it won't be applied within a sustainability framework, but it will be applied within an efficiency framework. which, you know, all companies can adhere to. So the way to look at it might change, but the work itself, I agree, might like will in the end stay similar. Something else that, you know, so we launched Circular Talent 6 months ago, and you know, we've been looking at job offers and job creation worldwide since. And if we look at continent, like Europe comes first, you know, in the amount that we've seen. But if we look at countries, the US is actually leading from the observations that we made. So there are a lot of, and of course it was like, you know, in like since 6 months ago, but still, like, you know, this tendency like will hardly stop, because these positions are, and often, yeah, these positions are not necessarily framed under sustainability. It goes more towards efficiency, operations, supply chain. So it feels like a lot of it will be staying.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I think it's a very, at least for those of us in the US, it's like, it's kind of just like shock after shock. And I think we are all just trying to catch our breath, you know, maintain some sort of sanity through all of it. But I think that that process of moving slowly is absolutely something that I've been trying to absorb. And I think, you know, as a coach too, I work with a lot of people that are like, should I even work in this space anymore, or should I even try? And my take on that is always that, like, this work, the need of this work is not going away. It doesn't matter how much funding we have coming in or who's in power or what's happening. Like, we know the reality of climate change. We know the urgency of these solutions. We're seeing natural disasters. We're seeing the impacts all over every day. So just because, you know, based on whoever's in power, it doesn't change the fact that this work needs to be done, but it's very much like the way we do the work might change. And I think that's where creativity comes in, where moving slowly comes in, where systems change and working with other people and community. All of that is part of this. So, yeah. I'm seeing a few questions in the chat. I think I'd like to ask this one question from Miriam. She's saying, I'm curious to understand how startups and like solutions funding works. How does the private sector respond to these different business propositions? And do you kind of anticipate that being a little difficult in the current economy? I think my understanding of that question is just on the private side, like startups, private companies, things like that. Like, how might they kind of push through in terms of circular innovation and things like that? And, um, you know, what does that even look like throughout time? Like, how does funding kind of fluctuate, and how do we push this sort of work forward? If either one of you have an idea on that.
Yeah, happy to take that. So we are primarily, well, we're split. So we are funded by government grants. We also have private funding as well. So we have a good balance between both. And I would say that what's really, really helped us has been state and government funding. Not I mean, obviously because of the money, but because having that backing and being able to move through policies and move projects along swiftly has been increasingly important. So that has been really interesting. Now, in terms of how things are going to change with the funding, um, from a private perspective, I think the funding still remains. There's still money that's there. There's still a lot of money that's there. The question now is focusing on bottom line. So unfortunately, this is, you know, the way the cookie crumbles. And if you can still show that there is a bottom line benefit to what you're doing, we have found that the push from our funders has still remained. They're still interested. They're still like, go do what you have to do. It's just that yes, you know, the current political climate is changing, but if your clients still find that there's benefit from it, great. What we found, and this is something that I felt like I had to learn at the start, which was, you know, you come in with this, hey, I want to do great from an environmental perspective, and you're pushing through all these, you know, sustainability-esque points that are going forth. However, at the end of the day, if the buyer can't see that there is a bottom line that's going to be useful for them, it can sound great, but they're not going to buy it. That's what was happening. Basically our C-suite was like, we love it, Rihanna, but is this actually going to help them financially? And some of the stuff, no, it wasn't. So I would say that if you can still show that there is that financial benefit, then for the most part, it's okay. You just have to be smart about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And in a way, it will push all sustainability innovations to go towards proving this profitability, which, like for circular economy adoption, like, it has been like one of the biggest barrier initially to like have it really adopted, because it was like, we were not talking the same language. Like, like circular economy, like was agenda initially was pushing on, environmental causes, material, and so on. But, we are ruled by money and finance, and the KPIs were not the same. And that's why, well, actually, like right now, Circle Economy, the organization I was working with, is working a lot currently on, on bringing in these KPIs, that in order to help financial institutions integrate circular economy indicators when they evaluate project. And that's what has been missing. So in a way, having this constraint will help pushing creating these new KPIs, and improving our ability to pitch, sustainability strategies as financially viable, so that can help the acceleration. Maybe something else also, from your question, that I want to add is that there are more and more venture capitals that are being created, focusing exclusively on circular economy solutions. So that's also a really great sign that, there's a lot of opportunity that is being seen in circularity strategies. And, if we talk about startups, like, it's always like looking after, consumer trends, tech, and optimization. So in a way, it's a lot of fields and direction where circular economy can really play a huge role. So there's definitely opportunity on that side.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we've got about 15 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Since so many folks are here to kind of explore, how do you land a job in circularity? How do you land a job in climate? Or how do you build that for yourself? So on the career side of things, maybe this is a question for both of you, but Lou, I'd love to maybe start with you of, what sorts of career opportunities are available in the circular space? And if you want to talk a little bit more about what your organization does, or even kind of what you're seeing on the recruiting side, I'd be very curious. But yeah, would love to ask that question, and then maybe we can go to open Q&A afterwards. But curious to hear, what opportunities are there for work and finding,
Yeah.
careers in circularity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so maybe from the analysis that we did for the past 6 months, like we looked at, around like 400 job offers internationally. And what we see is that, NGOs are, one of the top employers when it comes to circular economy. Then consulting is also highly present. And then it's a mix of, often technology is somewhere here, but it will be like, a mix of like tech and waste management, tech and supply chain, textile, agri-food, and so on. So, but maybe like to talk about the first one. In the end, what we identify as like huge drivers in, and right now I'm talking about job offers and job creation, which, is a bit different than entrepreneurship, because that's a whole different game. But actually, like people, companies hiring uh, in this area. A big driver is compliance. Like in Europe, actually there's more and more push to integrate circular economy and sustainability reporting. So that pushes a lot of consultancies primarily to create these positions in order to help companies both define their circular economy strategy and then report on it. But then another driver is what I was talking about earlier, risk mitigation in general. So and that's also why waste management is like big on like opening circular economy position, because it's a way to mitigate risk. So going into building knowledge and expertise in these areas are definitely going to be more and more in demand. And so a bit on what you were saying initially, Riyana, like the hard skills are of course necessary now, more and more, but then what tends to differentiate candidates is the curiosity that you were mentioning, but in general the ability to make to lead and make change happen, because in the end circular economy is more about breaking silos, creating new partnership, and being there during that transition. So anybody who's able to show that will be quite relevant in the transition.
Sorry, Radhika, I wasn't sure if you wanted to open it up to Q&A or whether you wanted me to answer.
If you have thoughts, if you'd
Oh,
like to share, you're welcome to, of course.
sorry, I wasn't sure which was the flow. I mean, I think Lou covered a lot of it. I am finding that there are very few circular specific roles. So if you're looking for like, a role that specifically in the title says circularity, that's much harder to come across. I think I'm repeating what I said earlier, which is that just stepping into roles that are not necessarily circularity is going to be the way forward, and incorporating circularity into it indirectly is the way that we should be thinking about it, given all the changes that are happening. And again, I'm speaking from the mindset of somebody that's here in the US. In Europe, as we mentioned, I feel like reporting and compliance is still very heavy. We don't know what that's going to look like over here. I think reporting is still something that people are looking for, but it, yeah, the push looks a little bit different now. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think, we started this off kind of talking about how your career paths and a lot of career paths are non-linear to where you've gotten to now. And I think that's the exact same case for any career changers or transitioners that are here. It's also the reality of your path into a circular job or into a climate job may also, it doesn't need to be as linear as you may think it needs to be. I think there's a lot of opportunity to build your own projects, like create a solution, especially locally. I think it's a really big thing that I talk about in the coaching world of a lot of people are on LinkedIn every day, like scouring the internet for opportunities, using keywords like circular, whichever areas you're looking for. And I really encourage everyone to also look in your backyard, look in your community, look at the local community farm, see, find opportunities for you to kind of engage in that work locally. And you might actually be able to build an immediate circular solution wherever you are, as opposed to a large corporation trying to do the work, and the work that you do locally might actually get you to that large corporation as well. So really just want to kind of wrap up this part and then go into Q&A with just this idea of there's a lot of possibility, and I know it's kind of a dizzying or maybe like a scary time right now, but there's still immense opportunity to create the world and create the opportunities that we are all looking for. And I think the best way to do that is through collaboration. So thank you both so much for sharing. I'd love to just take a look at the Q&A in the chat, but if anybody also, if you want to unmute, if you want to raise your hand, if there's anything pressing, feel free to unmute and ask the question as well as I look at some of the questions in the chat. Okay, not seeing any hands raised. So I will see, yeah, one question around in terms of connecting to future employers, are there any like networking opportunities or even ways to connect with more people doing circular work? Do you have any suggestions around that? And I'm happy to find the resources online and send them out as well. If you have any ideas or conferences top of mind.
Maybe also on the last thing that you mentioned, Radhika, to look in your own backyard. It's also like, you don't need a new job to start implementing circular economy strategies. Like, all like if we're, and that's something that and I realized that also, like, going into this recruitment venture, is that we don't realize how much we're thinking linear until, like, we're faced with it. And the way that, a lot of us or a lot of companies are seeing the circular economy transition is that, oh, okay, like, we're doing, like, it's all, like, everything that we've been doing is all wrong. We need to hire a new person to tell us a new strategy, and I'll fire everybody who was already in the team, and I'll hire new people with a new master degree. And in a way, it's really like, it's really the linear process that, like, get rid of what is not working anymore, and, like, buy new stuff for the new idea. And like, and we're also thinking of like that a bit as candidates. We're like, oh, well, the company where I'm at is not in the circular economy, so I need to get rid of that company to find a company that is circular. But in a way, that's like, we won't be able to make the transition by removing all the companies and creating new ones. So it's really important to also like try and implement this, within our current job. And usually, like, these, like I was saying, like, these experiences will be the most relevant ones to show to a future employer that might, in the end, have a business model a bit more aligned with our ambitions.
Absolutely. As they say, every job is a climate job. So every
Yeah.
job can be a circular job as well.
Mhm. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe actually I realized that I forgot to answer your question because I wanted to. But yeah, in terms of resources, well, actually, like, us what we do is that we do share weekly opportunities in circular economy. There are always opportunities in the US that I share on that weekly shortlist. And yeah, otherwise, the way that we work is that we have a database of candidates where anyone here on the call today can share their resume with us, and whenever we're working on a position, we rely on this to make our selection.
I would say that so first of all, I'd love to give a shout out to this group called Women in Climate. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of it. I'm sure some of you have. They're really great. So any women that are trying to enter the climate space, check them out. They have monthly meetups, and then they have an Excel sheet that they'll share in that monthly meetup. And you can state your name and you can state your request, which is, hey, I'd like to connect with someone in circularity. I've connected with other people in circularity, and vice versa. They've connected with me. So that's been really useful. And they have hubs around the world as well. So if anyone on this call is coming from other cities, other countries, they have people in many, many cities. The other element that I would actually suggest is, because I work in the startup space, I tend to move around these different literal physical spaces. So one location which I would actually recommend looking into is called New Lab. So that's an accelerator that we're a part of. But they have an actual on-site location, and it's at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. So if anyone's in New York City, feel free to email them and say, hey, I'd like to come and check out any companies that you have, and go and speak to people over there. Another one is Indie Bio, and that's also in New York City. And I apologize, a lot of my references are going to be focused on on this location, but they're in Manhattan. And I raise this because there are companies in these locations where they're working on circularity. So my point is, look for these accelerators that have in-person locations in your respective cities, and you can sit down and you can meet these companies and talk to them. And they're much smaller. They're harder to find. They're not out there as much as some other companies. But if you find the big company, which is, for example, like New Lab or IndieBio, these bigger names, you can find these smaller ones that are working on circularity. And then the third thing that I was going to say, oh gosh, was, okay, sorry, this third thing has like completely crossed, like I've lost it, but when I remember, I'll raise it again. But there was a third suggestion that I was going to make, but yeah, I'll
Nice.
share it.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. And I think in addition, that's a great recommendation of go like if you're looking at one company, like go around it. See who's funding them, see where their money is going, see who their clients and partners are, like kind of look at the ecosystem around a single organization and you'll likely find so many more. I also want to give a shout out to obviously, the New York Climate Week, the SF Climate Week, the first one that's happening. Actually, there's going to be DC Climate Week at the beginning of April. SF Climate Week is coming up, I think, in a month in April. So those are just some of the larger U.S. based climate weeks. But I think there's an uptick in climate weeks around the world. There's going to be one in Mexico City for the first time in October, and I think there's London Climate Week as well. So those sorts of conferences I think are also really excellent ways of meeting new people and just kind of interacting with lots of people. That's actually how Riyana and I met. We just kind of crossed paths at a New York Climate Week event, and look at us now. So there's really like so many different types of ways that you can connect with people at those larger events. So that's another thing to keep in mind is, yes, you want to work at a company, you want to connect with people, but I always encourage people to open up the aperture of what that connection is. Like you don't have to approach a conversation only from I'm looking for a job, but you can also approach it from I want to learn about this person, see what they're doing. And it really opens up so many other things that you can talk about in that conversation. Really quick, I know we're kind of almost at the end of the time, but I wanted to address Heather's question here of kind of thinking about, there are so many different verticals of circular economy type work, and there's only all these different waste streams, even. So, from your perspective, super quick, what waste streams do you think are super critical to address? Or are there like barriers that we need to overcome to kind of build solutions for that?
I honestly think agriculture is critical because it feeds into so many different industries, so
Mm-hmm.
many. And there's so much waste and so many of these farms. Okay, I remember what the third one was actually. So the grant that I was talking about earlier, which was under the U.S. Department of Agriculture, I think I saw it in the chat. Somebody here is from the USDA as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they have this project. It's called the Climate Smart Commodities Project. And although I mean, my advice now is a little bit different. If you had asked me 6 months ago, it would have been like go through the entire list. And these platforms, they will have, for example, this project in particular, they have an entire it's a website, it's a page, and they have about like 200 companies on there that are all trying to implement some climate smart solution. And in there are circular solutions as well, my company being one of them. And so it's, really kind of going into all these different grants and all these different projects and going through all the list of their companies. It's nitty-gritty work, it's not fun, but you'll find really interesting stuff in there. So I did want to share that final one. But anyway, going back to what I was saying earlier, which was about the verticals. Yes. So I personally think it's agriculture because it just feeds into so many different things. Yeah,
Mhm.
let
Yeah.
Lou go on
No,
time.
yeah, like I agree with that actually. Like with the circularity gap report, that's a lot of the work that circular economy does is looking at the flows of material and which industries are the most relevant for circular economy implementation. And yeah, agriculture is there at the top. I would add also anything in the built environment, but in a way that's also because circular economy is looking at material and amount of material. So of course, we're talking about two fields that are representing a lot of volume, but then that still doesn't mean if we again, like, we need to look at the bigger picture. If we look at electronics, for example, that in the end might be like much smaller weights. In the end, throughout the whole supply chain, they create a lot. So yeah, if you look at it from the circular economy perspective only, yeah, definitely, like, food and agriculture and built environment are there at the top. Yeah, I think I'll add the report that we did on this in the chat.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I know we're at the end of our time. Please recommend, everyone here connect with the speakers, connect with each other. Any final words, Riyana or Lou, that you want to share? Just any final advice that you'd share for any job seekers or people that are really motivated to work in this space? Any like final note that you'd say to kind of encourage and give people hope to move into this arena?
Yeah, I'd say, like, like you said, like, networking is at the top of this, because and networking with people that are from completely different fields. Like I said, like, it's about the bigger picture, and it's about our ability to create change, to see opportunities that were not seen before. So in a way, that's why I really like circular economy as well, is because it's a lot of soft skills that are becoming more and more relevant. It's really bringing back a lot of humanity into the way that we do things and we do business. So yeah, like, it's not just going to be in the books that will be great circular economy specialists. It's also going back to interpersonal relationships and yeah.
Yeah, I would say don't get hung up on the name. I think we are so fixated when it comes to environmental stuff because of the way that, the society works. We're just hung up on it. It has to say we're doing environmental work. It has to say we're doing sustainability work. Don't get hung up on that. Remember your why. And go back to that, go back to why you're doing this. Go back to the people that you've been talking to. Go back to the people that have inspired you. Some of the moments that have reminded me why I'm doing is we literally have just a month ago, we were up in the Catskills talking to farms up there about what help they needed and just physically being with them. Like, don't forget that you have an entire resource and network of people to speak to that perhaps you haven't spoken to. Go and be with them, because I think that's where the biggest opportunity lies in today's day and age, where there's so much opportunity to think that you have the right idea and the right solution. You won't really know unless you're really spending time with the people that you're trying to impact, and the spaces that you're trying to impact. We are constantly behind our screens, like Radhika said, looking at LinkedIn and so on and so forth. But really, how much time, I think we need to ask ourselves, how much time are we really physically allowing ourselves to be in nature, to observe it, to see biomimicry? Like, what can we learn from it? We're not spending enough time there because we're here. So ask yourself, like, have you been doing that? And have fun with it, because I think we're going to lose the essence of why we're doing this if we don't remember our why.
Beautiful. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you both so much, Riyana and Lou. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you, everyone, for joining this conversation. I will be sharing the recording and all the resources that we shared in the chat. I'm going to put them all in an email so everyone will get them tomorrow. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Please stay connected with each other. I loved how everyone dropped their LinkedIn in the chat. We can only do this work together. So I hope that everyone stays connected. Please let me know. Please feel free to reach out to me if you need any support. Super excited and thank you and grateful really to have Riyana and Lou here today. So thank you so much and take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks, everyone, for joining.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Bye.
really.
thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.